Hi, welcome to Alexandra Joy Coach TV. Today, I am thrilled and honored to be speaking with Rob Mason. I'm doing this the virtual way. Rob Mason is a coach that I met through an organization called Authentic Education, and he will be talking about what that organization is about and some of the amazing transformational training that they do. But I met Rob I guess it was about a year and a half ago through that organization. He lives in Sydney, which is where Authentic Education is based. He's trained more than 1,000 business, life, and executive coaches. I'm reading his bio. He works with a diverse range of clients, which include executives, athletes, small business owners. He's head of coaching and research for Authentic Education. Again, he will be mentioning more about what that organization does in Sydney and Australia. And he is professionally certified by the International Coaching Federation, as well as an ultra marathon runner, which I know that you are quite the ultra marathon runner, which we'll get you to talk a little bit about, because when people hear that, I don't think they realize the degree to which you have to train to do what you do out there in the mountains running. So again, it's an honor to have you on the channel today. And what we're going to be discussing is a little bit about your journey, especially the ultra marathoning. And I'd love to hear your 5 top tips for coaches, because you have spent a lot of your career training coaches in how to be successful. You are going to share with us your understanding and research around shadow values, which is really the point of our conversation, and how they relate to core values, and how doing the work around shadow values and by getting what our shadow values are provides us so much access to empowerment and true transformation. The whole world of shadow values I was exposed to through you and your business partner, Ben Harvey at Authentic Education. I know it's a very ancient concept. So I know that he didn't create it or you didn't create it, but the whole world of shadow values I just found so empowering and such a missing piece of the puzzle in a lot of the transformational and spiritual environments, immersion experiences. So that's why I'm excited to have this conversation today at this level. So first, can you do a better job at telling us a little bit about yourself? A little better job than I did.
Okay, sure, great. Well, thanks for having me on, and absolute pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to share this information because, like you said, it is the missing link a lot of personal development world and a lot of courses that the watchers, the viewers may have been to. So you pretty much nailed it. For the last 8 years now, I've had my own coaching practice, where I've been training coaches. We run a course at Authentic Education called the Accelerated Coaching Certification. We've trained more than 1,000 coaches now. I've been doing this for 8 years now. So I calculated that I've worked with more than 3,000 people in that time.
Wow.
One-on-one, which is fantastic for me as a personal journey, but I've really got to get to know the human psyche, and there's nothing more powerful than I've learned than this shadow values. And I take this into everything I do now, including my running, which we can talk about as the interview goes on. So, but I want to give you as much as I can today to really, help the listeners and the watchers understand this other side of the human psyche that not many people actually ever take the time to delve into.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So why don't we dive in? Can you define what shadow values are? I find with my clients that I try to define it well, but sometimes it sounds a little mysterious because of the word shadow.
Yeah, it's a bit mystical term. So let's look into it. So most people will know about the concept of values. So we've got a hierarchy of priorities that we organize our life by. But what these values actually are is our golden side values. So we may have health, wealth, relationships, fun, adventure, finances, all this hierarchy. But that's as far as most values workshops actually go. Because on the other side are the shadow values. To understand what shadow values are, we first have to go into what the shadow is. Every human being is made up of light and dark. And unless we discover the dark and embrace the dark, we will never be fulfilled. We'll never be half filled. So the shadow is a Jungian concept. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, came up with the shadow after many different, a labyrinth of, I guess, his pathway. But the shadow really represents our repressed self. It's all the parts of ourself that we are ashamed of, that we don't want to show the world, that we don't share with people, that we hide away from and don't accept about ourselves. Robert Bly, the American poet, probably said it best. He said the shadow is like a black bag that we hang over our shoulder, and we put all the parts that we don't like about ourselves into the black bag. And all these parts start, and I know this is a long-winded thing, but they start from childhood. When we were young, we're like this full, he calls us like a globe, a 360-degree globe. You think of a young child, like I've got a 15-month-old daughter. She has no shame, no guilt, no fear, except the inherent fears. But if she wants to cry, she cries. If she wants to yell, she yells. If she wants to run around, she runs around. There's no restriction to who she is. She owns the room. She controls everything that goes on. If she wants the center of attention, she gets it in a heartbeat. But as she grows up, it's going to happen. It happens to all of us. There's a journey that we go through where we start to realize that our parents don't accept parts of us. So I wish you were more of a quiet person, or I don't treat your sister like that. Or, they start to put labels on us, like you are this, you are naughty, you are noisy, and all these labels that start to get put on us, we start to build shame around it. And whenever we get told these things by our parents, our teachers, the media, religion, all these type of things that affect our values, we throw those parts of ourselves into the black bag. And as we grow up, the black bag gets longer and longer and longer with all the stuff we don't like about ourselves. So we be nice all the time, never mean. We always polite when we meet people. We say the right things because all the things that we don't like about ourselves are hidden in the bag. So the bag becomes longer and longer until we get to, Robert Bly says, around about the age of 30 to 50, we start to open the bag because we realize that there's part of ourselves that hasn't been, we don't feel fulfilled, and we start looking for it. And that's when we open up the bag and start to look into this work, if we know what we're doing. So that's a long-winded version, but if I could shorten it down, I would say it's the repressed part of ourselves that we want to hide from the world.
Diving right into the shadow values, can you define shadow? Can you define values? Can you define shadow values?
Yep. Great. So most of your viewers would have learned about values. We each have a hierarchy of priority of our priorities in life, which are actually set in some order. Even though we may not know it, there's an order and sequence that we organize and run our life by. They're our values. But if you look into the shadow, we have to understand the shadow has its own values as well. And if we only ever look at the golden values, like the health, wealth, relationships, adventure, finances, these are all these golden values that we run our life by. If we just focus on them, we're missing out on the balancing side, which are the shadow values. To understand shadow values, we just have to look at what the shadow is. So Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, basically identified the shadow as the repressed part of ourself, laden with guilt and shame that we hide from the world. Robert Bly, the American poet, said it best. He says, our shadow is like a black bag that we hang over our shoulder, and we stuff all of the things that we're ashamed of into that black bag so that no one will see it. So as we grow up, we're this perfect being of light who just is totally free to be who we are. We can yell and cry as babies and run our life as we want. But as that child grows up, we're shaped, for want of a better word, by our parents, by our teachers, by our society, by our media, by our religious influences. And we get told that it's not okay to be loud and boisterous. It's not okay to talk yourself up and boast about yourself. It's not okay. Well,
especially in Australia. That's more of an
In Australia, the tall poppy syndrome is a terrible thing. Tall poppy syndrome is where you cut down all the people who put their heads up. Yeah. So all of these things, as we're learning, we grow up and say, oh, so that part of me is not good. I better put that into the black bag because it's unaccepted by the people around me. And if I bring that out, I won't be loved. So I put it in the bag. And as we grow up, we put more and more into this black bag that we carry over our shoulder like a black Santa sack. And as Robert Bly says, when we get to the age of 30 to 50, that's when we actually if we're self-aware and if we take the time to want to wake up in life, that's when we start to open the bag and inspect the contents. And that's the depth of the shadow. Because you look across all of history, there's always the yin yang, there's always the light and the dark, the positive and the negative, the North Pole, the South Pole, whatever metaphor you want to use. Human beings are the same. We have a light side and we have a dark side. And unless we delve into that dark side, understand us from that level, accept ourselves, we can never be fulfilled. We'll never be half filled. So the shadow is that part of us that we've repressed, and the shadow values are the hierarchy on that side of our psyche. And there's such things as wanting attention. Now, when I start to talk about shadow values, it might bring up some people's stuff because it's stuff we don't talk about. So our shadow generally has 7 core values that we've identified as authentic education. They are: attention is number 1, as in wanting to be seen, wanting people to give us attention. Belonging to belong.
That's one
to
of mine.
Yeah, me too, right? Me too.
Right.
And we all have it,
Yeah.
but somewhere along the line we get told it's not good to want to have people's attention, you know. So that gets stuff in the bag. Belonging to a group, belonging to a tribe, belonging to a religion or a cause. Control. This is one of those things that most personal development courses say, give up the need to control, you know, let go of control. Yet your shadow, or my shadow, and you know, most people's shadows, has an element that they want to control. Our sexuality, the shadow wants to freely express our sexuality. I'm not sure what it's like in America. Certainly San Francisco is quite free there.
Yeah.
But definitely in Australia, most people aren't free to express their sexuality in the way they want. And even in our relationships, there's a stiltedness where there's shame around it, where we're unable to express what we really want around sexuality. The next one's superiority. So that's where our shadow wants to be better than other people. We can delve right into these in great superiority. The next is validation, to have that from other people, being told we're doing really well, or thanks for doing that, you know, being respected and appreciated, all that kind of stuff. And the last one is kind of a side one, but it's money. And the reason it's a side one is the money's linked to a lot of different values. So if you think of it in the form of the shadow as being money and greed, you kind of understand it a little bit more. So the shadow loves to have that. If you think of the get-rich-quick schemes and you know, fast, don't have to work for money, those kind of lottery type of mentality thing, that's where the shadow side of money really comes in. So that's a short overview. We can have a look. More detail. Yeah,
because there's a lot of questions. So it's interesting because the word, I think Jung chose the word shadow for a reason, right? So when you say that it's the part we put in the bag, it's almost like it's not there, right? But really, would you say the shadow's always present?
Great question. It's always there. And the only way we're going to actually have fulfillment and love for ourselves is if we take the time to look at our shadow and understand it and accept it. Because most people will start to find these parts of themselves, the lazy part of themselves, the controlling part of themselves, the needy part of themselves, or the angry part of themselves. And they say, I wish I wasn't like that. I'm going to go and work on that and have therapy on it for 30 years, hoping it'll go away. It's never going to go away. The only way to work with it is to understand it and love it and accept it as part of your psyche. That's why Jung calls it the shadow. It's not going anywhere.
Okay. Because it's just so interesting, because one of the things that I have found being a journey woman, a seeker, someone who is open to most transformational and spiritual experiences, environments, immersion experiences, is a lot of the teachers I find aren't owning their shadows.
Yeah, well, I guess
not like that's not a judgment. It's just, it's just an interesting distinction, because when I'm in a room sometimes and I feel something's off with the message that I'm getting from who's ever the teacher or the guru or the presenter or whatever you want to call them. And I never realized it until I got this distinction shadow values is because there was something in the background that wasn't being said. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, it is. I think let's look a little bit deeper. When we go into a room, as you're describing, let's look at, you go to a seminar and you're looking at the person who's leading the seminar. What we forget is that they're a human being with a shadow side and they're trying to meet all their needs somehow. So what most people in that room...
trying to meet their individual needs as the presenters? Okay, right, got it.
Yeah, as in they're a human being up there who's perfectly imperfect, who's...
Right.
Got a lot of stuff.
Imperfect, is that what she said?
Yeah.
That's great.
And we sit there, most people will sit in that room and project onto that person our shadow. So you think of the quintessential American who goes to the Asian countries, so maybe might go to China, Vietnam, or the mountains, or the Nepal somewhere, and they project onto the guru all of their well, I'm going to say their brilliance, and they say, that's my guru. That's actually a shadow at work, because they're saying this person's got all the answers. They're going to tell me things that I need to know for my life. It's the same thing you're describing in a seminar or something. We project it onto them. So we really have to own that. If they're not being, as you say, if they're hiding something away from them, then maybe they haven't got in touch with their shadow, but also we need to accept that we're contributing to that by projecting our stuff onto them. That's when we start to tear them down. Oh, Alexandra, I've lost sound. I've lost your sound.
Oh, sorry. I said I was writing down because it was so interesting. So say a little more about that projection, because I know it as a concept, but in real time, how to...
Yeah, let me give you a metaphor. So if you think about the black bag metaphor with all the stuff that we're ashamed of in the bag, Robert Bly talks about, it's a bit old school, but the film can. Remember the old film cans with the film reel? Used to go around and around. Well, they call them cans. So he used to say, you put all of your stuff, like your unresolved unconscious stuff that you're ashamed of, onto a film reel, and you throw it in the can. And he says, when you least expect it, what your psyche is doing is pulling out that and looking at a person or the world through that film.
Yeah, that's very good.
That's a projection analogy. So you're projecting, and projection's not always a bad thing. Like it depends on which way you look at it. But we're always projecting our stuff onto someone. This is where you start to find your shadow, because if you're seeing something in somebody else that's pushing your buttons, it's making you angry, making you frustrated, it's because it's something in you that you've projected onto that person from your shadow and you haven't owned.
Yes,
so the person that frustrates you, the person that you think is inauthentic or false or lazy or bitchy, or you insert your word of choice here. When you do your shadow work, you realize it's a part of your shadow you've projected onto that person for the purposes of healing it.
That's the interesting.
Yeah, for the purpose of healing it. But instead of that, we don't. If we're not awake to this stuff, you just think that person's mean, that person's a control freak, or that person wants all the attention, or whatever we project on them.
So then I think one of the things that you opened with is people know what their core values are. Mm-hmm. And, like as in the concept, I find still, when I work with people and clients, that there's still some lack of clarity around really what core values are and how important they are. So let's go back a step so we make sure we really distinguish the values of values, core values. Mm-hmm. And then I think we can get more into the meat of how our shadow impacts that. Because from my understanding, ironically, we don't realize we're choosing our core values from our shadow.
Wow. Good understanding. Okay, so just the work that you do with people's values is exceptional. I know you're a DiMartini facilitator who's probably the world leader on values. And the process you use with people is just the best I've seen. And those 13 questions that you use in your information. So I would encourage everyone to either contact you for that or do that values work, because once you've got the clarity around those core values, which is, once again, just the way you organize your life. It's already organized according to your values. You probably just haven't got the conscious awareness of it. So if you take a sick day off work to look after your children because they're sick, or if you take the time off work to look after your children because they're sick, that's because your children are higher on your values than your work. Quite simple. If you walk into a food court or a food hall and you go to the health food shop instead of the donut shop, it's because health is higher on your values than whatever you get from eating the donuts. If you look at how you spend your time, how you organize your life, it's all there. And once you have conscious awareness, it's just like you're free to make the decisions according to your values.
Well, because we're always doing it anyway.
Exactly.
It's just when we bring some consciousness to it, then we get a little more access to, if we want to shift something, like I'd rather go to the health food store versus the donuts. But unless you shift the background of the value, right, you're always going to, and then you think it's something wrong with you because you're going to go for the donuts. You just haven't done the work to shift.
Great analogy. Well said. So the shadow is the same. It's always working in the background, trying to hit its own values. But unless you do shadow work, you're never actually going to have that awareness of it. And Jung had a great saying, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he said it's hard to chase a lion that swallowed you.
That's great.
So if you can kind of conceptualize that, the shadow has you. It's running your life. And unless we take the time to say, what are my higher shadow values? What do I most want on the shadow side? And how can I then, first of all, go and get more of it to appease my shadow, and then start to love my shadow, and so I can be a fulfilled human being.
Okay, so let's take it. Okay, so great. Thank you for distinguishing values as related to shadow. Now, the source of our shadow values, because we talk about that, because in the martini world, our values always come from our voids. So is it necessarily true that our shadows then come from how you describe the 2-year-old that's self-expressed and something happens and they decide X, Y, or Z about them and they put that part of themselves in the bag? So is it the same, shadows come from voids?
The short answer is yes. And again, I think it's Robert Bly. I think he quotes Sam Keen, the author of the book Fire in the Belly. And he says, you find a person's wound and you'll find their genius. So when DeMartini's talking about values coming from void, yeah. So if you look into that, we want to look at what your biggest wound is. Because when you were wounded, you shoved something into the bag. If you had that breakup when you were, the first, remember that heartbroken first romance when it broke up, you put all this stuff in the bag. When you're told those early childhood memories where your mum didn't speak to you, I mean, that was one of mine, right? I remember being in trouble and having the silent treatment, and I remember all of the pain around, what did I do wrong? Did I not do that again? And it was because I was being loud in a very inappropriate time. And it was a very inappropriate time. And Mum was right to pull me up on it. But what happened in that time was I put my expression into the bag, and I never got it out until I started doing this work about 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, so, interesting, because you now lead courses. Wouldn't that be?
Exactly. Exactly. I never would have if I didn't explore the shadow. To give you more examples, so share some of my own. My biggest thing growing was I wanted to fit in. I never felt like I fit in at school, in my sporting teams.
I know that one.
Yeah, well, probably many people watching this can as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, my teenage years was just a struggle to fit in. I do things against my values. So as in against my golden values, because my shadow wanted to belong. So belonging was is one of my higher shadow values. So I would go drinking, I would smoke cigarettes, I'd take drugs to fit in with a group of people I want to be involved with. Even though, at the one of my archetypes is the athlete. I was healthy and fit and a great sportsman, anything I did. Come the weekend, I would be destroying my body to get that belonging. And that's the shadow at work. And unless you understand that that's what your shadow is, and now just to show you the transition, my belonging comes from building a community of runners and training young guys how to run and coaching people and talking about running. So that's how I get in and hanging out with fellow runners and volunteering at events and belonging to the tribe. And my shadow is still getting that belonging in a different way.
Right. So following that through line, your shadow's always at work, always.
Mm-hmm.
And
Always.
the pathway can either be healthy or unhealthy, right? So it's up to us, free will, or to choose how it's going to be, or is it up to awareness, consciousness, to choose how
Correct.
the
Yeah.
shadow is going to be fulfilled?
Yes. Well, yeah. So awareness first, and then conscious choice to fulfill the values.
Right.
So let me be clear. Sorry, you're going to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me be perfectly clear on this. The intention is to be an integrated, fulfilled human being. It's not to destroy the shadow.
Okay.
You're not going to destroy it. So the purpose is find out the shadow's highest values and meet them and love them. If you want to be more superior than anybody else in your
Which is one of the shadow values, superior.
One of the shadow values, yeah. Go and be superior. And because what most courses will be, it's bad to want to be higher than us. We're all even. We're all one. But your shadow is in the background saying, "Don't care about that. I want to be superior." And it's funny how it comes out. People have more degrees, and they go to university to try and get more and more education. They do more courses. They watch interviews like this because they're just looking for that little thing. So then next time you're at that party, you say, "Oh, you know what? I've just done this new course, or I've got this new bit, or this insight that I share." So you just cut above the rest. And to share my superior shadow, I know that pretty much any room I walk in, no matter where I am in the world, I can run further than anybody in that room. So that's an example of my shadow.
Right. So that's interesting because it really ties to the one of how I methodologies that I've been trained in for years is your life has to be about being committed to something bigger than yourself. Like the true fulfillment comes from being committed to something bigger than yourself. And some say that's service, some say that's contribution. And the East has been talking about service for a lot longer than the West has. So you would think if that were necessarily true, tie your contribution into the world, that living into something bigger than yourself, to your shadow value, because then it's like it's a shoe that fits versus trying to impose something that then you're not in inspired action, or it's a good idea to do X, Y, or Z in my community, or solve poverty for the planet, which are all important things. But it's if you link it to, this is what I'm getting from you saying, if you link it to your shadow value, then you've got that much more natural vitality and energy to put towards whatever your life is going to be about.
Yes, beautiful. So what you're saying is, if you link your shadow values to your service,
yes,
you'll be unstoppable. Because here's the real juice in shadow. There's a great book. It's not no longer in print. It's by a psychotherapist, Andrew Morrison. It's called Shame: The Underside of Narcissism. It's really kind of full-on. But to summarize the book, so let's look at shadow and shame as being kind of similar, because we're ashamed of what our shadow is and what it wants.
Right.
Yep. So when we look into shame, Brené Brown's done fantastic work on the shame. Brené Brown, absolutely.
Yeah.
You look a little bit deeper. In this book, Morrison postulates that what's underneath shame is what he calls, a very psychoanalytical term, he calls it untransmuted and internalized grandiosity. So what that means in conversational terms is your shame is like a lid on your brilliance.
A lid on your brilliance, yeah.
A lid that's stopping your brilliance from shining. So as we said before, your wound is where your genius is. When we can look at our shame, lift the lid on the black bag, boom, out comes our brilliance. But while the shame is still there on top, we will project our brilliance onto other people. And it will sound like this. Oh, you know what? She just shines. I could never shine like that. That person is they're just so quick. They always seem to have the right answer. I could never be like that. or they are just so insightful and so beautiful and so wonderful. And what that is called the golden shadow, which is a different concept of the shadow, which is our brilliance, our grandiosity being projected onto other people so we don't have to own it. Because if I owned it, I would be judged, I would be wrong, I would be shamed, I would be not accepted, and all the values get met.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I'll tell one on myself. It absolutely resonates, as you can tell if you've watched any of my interviews. My highest value, shadow value, one of them is attention. And I moved to New York City when I was 20 to be an actress. I didn't know it then. I mean, of course, actors want attention. That is pretty common knowledge. It wasn't until I really owned that value of wanting attention that I could channel it into my passion for the world of transformation and wanting to speak and aggregate all the messages that are out there and interview everybody I can meet and talk to, with concepts, with distinctions, and put it on in one place, on one channel. And it's all about wanting my own attention too, because somewhere I have a void around that. And, it happened when I was 2 and 4. Probably really haven't sourced that as strongly as I should, but I for sure know that I love attention as a shadow. So it's absolutely correlates. And the interesting thing is Oprah is, of course, one of my, role models. I think she's, I just love what she does on the planet. I love her impact, and I love what she does on Super Soul Sundays. And of course, sometimes I've looked at her and say, I could, that's just way, so much better than I can ever be, and all that. And it's true. Part of that's true. She's been doing it for years. But I used it to stop me. Yes. I used it to stop a contribution versus being responsible for the difference I want to make on the planet in whatever way I can, as in the way that I'm meant to, sourced by a higher source. So yeah, I totally resonate with what you just said, because, and I had to channel it into contribution. This work, this is why I'm with you today, is my point. It's exactly what you just said. And also, I have the shadow value of control too. So that plays into the wanting to control what people say in the interviews, the whole thing. It's very interesting. Exactly. It's a great example, Alexandra. If you look at the shadow values, and the question to be asking to link them is, how will me gaining more attention, being more in control, and let's just say superiority. Yeah, superiority is there too, for sure. Yeah, there we go. Help me fulfill my purpose, or help me be of more service to the planet. And it's exactly what you've done now. Without that conscious awareness that you love attention, that you love control, that you love superiority, you won't. It'll be there, but it'll probably be showing up in different areas of your life. Well, absolutely. And the irony is, my husband would say, well, he knows that about me, and it annoys him. So if we don't own it, or your friends know that about you, they don't tell you, but they know, I know that about the people that I love, but we don't tell them, and it's not our job to tell them, because it's there. We love them anyway, right? Or, your closest people that you have around you love anyway. We put up with it. But it's interesting, because if they get it and they own it, and the more that I've owned it, I think the less annoying I am to the people in my life. The people that I have. And that's a great, the great term is owning it, owning the shadow. Marie-Louise von France, the famous Jungian, she always says that the word she used was condensed. Wait, who is that? We missed you because of the video. Sorry, the audio. What did you say, Marie-Louise von France. She's a Jungian psychoanalyst. She always says the word she uses, a condensed human being. So there's people that you meet them and they just seem more grounded, because they're in touch with their shadow. They're not this beautiful. Please take this the right way. Not this shining light that's just this perfect being of light. They're also a grounded person who's able to say, yeah, you know what? I had a pizza and 10 donuts the other night, and I drank half a bottle of wine because I just wanted to relax. And there's people who are able to speak from the heart and just they own the space that they're in. This is a kind of an insight into someone who's started to own their shadow. Someone who's not afraid to
to grab the attention, to say that they've got a degree in psychology or whatever they've got, and they're not fearful of taking control of the situation, because there's no shame around their shadow. And that condensed human being is when you're talking about owning it. And you can own it by having awareness of it and then not wanting to change it. Most people who do shadow work will get to this point. Okay, now I understand that I want attention and control and superiority. How do I change that? And that's the wrong question to ask. The question is, how do I get even more of it and link it to my golden values and my purpose and my mission and my service in life?
Yes, very good. What I'd like to do is break down each shadow value so that, you know, viewers can actually see which one pops for them. Because I know it was clear for me when I read attention and control, those were my two. But I think we need to kind of delve into each category